Hi, it's Chantel from Fiberific here. It's been a really long time since I've recorded a video and I feel really out of whack. It's like I'm starting all over again and I'm really nervous. I've been really enjoying doing the live streaming that we've been doing over the last few weeks, and I think it's made me a little bit lazy. It's so much easier just to flick on the webcam, set up the sound when I remember to set it up right. So if you haven't seen any of those, grab a cuppa, grab your craft, sit down. They're a bit of fun. In this video, I want to talk about yarn standards and how they're not actually standard, which I find rather interesting. One thing to remember is YouTube and the internet and Ravelry and all these things is worldwide, and there is actually not a worldwide standard for yarn. There is a US standard, and there is a standard used for the UK, New Zealand and Australia, and I'm not sure what other countries use. I'm in Australia. I tend to think in Australian terminology because this is where I've learnt to craft, this is where I live, this is where I buy my supplies. But over the years, I've had to really become bilingual when it comes to yarn, because what means one thing here does not mean the same thing in the US. Now, it's important for you to understand that more than half of you out there that watch my videos are from the United States of America. And then there's around 30% from Australia, and then there's smatterings from lots of other different countries. And I think it's absolutely amazing. And when I look at those stats, I get a bit like, oh my gosh, there's people from other countries watching my stuff. There's people watching my stuff. And so I get a little frazzled and excited, excited all at the same time. I do try to make this content Australian-ish because there isn't a lot of content. There isn't a lot of crafting content for Australians or that speak using the Australian terminology. But in the same time, I do have to be mindful that not all of you are Australian, and not to talk too quickly and not to use too many sort of Australianisms. Let's go with that. I don't tend to use a lot in my everyday conversation anyway, but you know, it happens. Well, there you go. I think that's very Australian. Anyway, yarn standards. So the Craft Yarn Council of America created this excellent standard, and I will put all the links to everything down below so that you can look at it later as well. But they have this amazing chart that they've designed for these standards, and they are printed, the numbers from these charts are printed on a lot of US-based yarns. Now, unfortunately, that makes some people, when they're designing patterns and things like that, they will just write the number for the yarn that's required. And that makes it difficult for those of us that aren't used to those numbers or that don't know what they mean. So it's important that we all learn all the languages so that we don't hit these walls, we don't hit these barricades that make it so that we can't do what we want to do. We have the same words meaning some of the similar things. Yet again, they're similar to the crochet languages that we've talked about in the past. We have things like weight and ply, worsted and other things that mean multiple things across these crafts. So when I think of the weight of yarn, I'm thinking, how much does the yarn weigh? So I'm thinking, okay, my weight is 100 grams. But unfortunately, it's not all it means. And so depending on who you're speaking to, it could also mean whether it's lace weight or fingering weight or worsted weight. We'll come back to worsted in a minute. Whereas here in Australia, we talk plies. We talk 2-ply instead of lace weight. We say 4-ply instead of fingering or sock weight. We say 8-ply instead of DK, and we say 10-ply instead of worsted weight, and on and on and on. And then there's also contention even amongst that. Some people think that worsted weight is a 12-ply rather than the 10-ply. Anyway, it gets all very confusing because they all mean different things to different people. Now, the other thing to remember is I'm also a spinner, so I construct yarn, and plies are the terms used in yarn construction, not just the actual diameter of the yarn. So when I think of a 2-ply, I'm thinking 2 strands plied together making a yarn, right? I don't always think lace weight when I'm thinking 2-ply, and I don't always See, even I get confused because I do call lace weight because I don't like the term 2-ply. So we all talk around things differently just to make it even more confusing. So we've got all these things. We've got these standards. We've got Ravelry with their really... the Ravelry list is very, very, very comprehensive. Comprehensive is the word I was looking, because it does take into account the fact that we are a worldwide entity, that those of us on the internet could be looking from anywhere. We're not limited to the US or to the UK or to Australia. So we have got all these different things in their weights there. So it's just something that we all need to remember. We need to research into, because depending on what you're thinking, because a 4-ply may not be a fingering weight or a sock yarn. 4-ply could be this round with 4 plies this big, all twisted together. It doesn't actually denote the diameter of the yarn when you think of it as a perspective of a spinner, because the number of plies makes the construction rather than the size. So then you've got worsted. I told you we'd come back to worsted. So worsted weight is the American term for a 10 or 12 ply, depending on who you're talking to, yarn in Australia and the UK and New Zealand. From a spinner's perspective, the worsted is the preparation that goes into making a yarn. So it's either smooth and slinky or fluffy and lofty or anything in between, because then there's semi-worsted and fully worsted. It just goes on. The point of this video is to explain that these words all mean different things to different people, and that we can't just go, well, it's a DK weight yarn. And for people to understand what DK means, because not everybody does, those of you that don't know, DK is double knitting, which is 8-ply in Australian and a light worsted in the US. So research your yarn, especially if you're going out to substitute your yarn. Make sure you're using the right weights or plies of yarn for the project that you're doing, or understand the differences that you're going to get from that yarn. Sometimes you want the finer yarn to make the project, or the thicker yarn to make the project, but you need to understand how it works. So this was my little get back into making videos video. It was as clear as mud, right? So did you enjoy this video? I am sure there's going to be a serious amount of thumbs downs on this one with people that don't agree with me that this is confusing. What do you think? Do you think it's confusing? Do you think that it'd be really, really nice if there was one worldwide standard for yarn weights and sizes and diameters and the like? Or are you okay with having to remember different things from different countries? So let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to pop in some links of different places that you can look at different charts to work out what on earth I've just been talking about. And I hope that you have a look and get the feel of what the different countries mean by different things. If you've been knitting or crocheting or working with yarn for a long time, you've probably already worked all of this out. But there's a lot of us out there who haven't really delved into buying yarn outside of our local big box stores, and it can be daunting and confusing, especially if you're buying online. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. I'm going to bring out another video next Tuesday. Keep an eye out for tomorrow's live video of announcing the last winner of the live feeds. I plan on doing a once a month live feed on a Thursday. I haven't decided a time yet. Let me know what time you would like a live feed on Thursday and what time zone that you are in, so that I can try and work out the best time for everybody. I'm also looking at the possibility of doing a Saturday or a night time in my time zone to make it easier for people who are working or have other commitments that can't get into a live feed in the middle of the day in this time zone. Anyway, it's time for you to fill your universe with fiber fun. Off you go. I'll see you next time. Bye.